place. However, that program is casualty of Doge, and those funds are not available to us. So we're asking that you make an amendment to the grant that would enable us to access the funds. However the process goes, I'm not sure because it's in the hands of the commissioners, but I thought it best to come here first, and you can guide me on the proper steps to take to seek that kind of an amendment. So that's my business with you today.
So the FEMA grant was not awarded.
It was not awarded.
This project, how's the budget look? Is there a gap then?
We have, if we get the grant, then we can complete our roof.
Okay.
So we do have some funds that came from congregations because we rely primarily on churches in the Commonwealth to support our work. So we do have some support, not the level that we were asking for from FEMA,
Right.
but we do have some funds.
So what is the balance of the total construction cost?
The balance is $111,000.
What's the value of the grant?
75.
And was that grant based upon a leveraged amount, like from FEMA? Because I know in the past, grants would be leveraged against other funds. Is that the situation he's referring to?
That was the FEMA grant was one of the funding resources that was identified in the grant
As
application.
leveraging for the project?
Yes.
Right. So that's what you guys aren't gonna be able to complete the project with our 75. You can't cover the difference.
Complete the project. We have the money to finish our roof.
You guys can prove that. You have the money in the bank.
Oh, yeah.
You do. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what you probably
Yeah, in fact, when,
require, right? I mean, you want to see the proof of funds.
Yeah, so the recommendation would be to put your request for either waiving the condition or removing the condition in writing to Brooke, the grants coordinator, explaining, what you're saying today, the status of the FEMA grant, whether it's just not being awarded to anyone,
Right.
or, what's going on with that, and why you can't meet the condition. It sounds like it may be beyond your control,
Right.
and then additional information how you will be able to complete the project. So
Okay.
that would include those additional
so you
funds.
want our bank statements or what would you want?
Brooke can explain that
Okay.
level of detail once you get the dialogue
So
going.
should I just email you and ask you?
Yeah, that would be great, if you want to provide that information, just to show that you have the funds available. We would want that for the record, just to be able to show that when we make the request, either review in our office or make the request to the Board of Commissioners.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, can I stay?
Yeah.
There are no other members of the public. We'll move on with the agenda. But at this time, we're going to give an overview of the local share gaming program, just to give you a general idea of what the program is, how it works, and why your role is important to the process. And so George's office, or their oversight of the IDA, includes the administration of the grant program. The grant program was created when the Commonwealth enacted the Gaming Act back in 2004. And under the act, it provides that the county receives a portion of what we call local share assessment from the Hollywood Casino, based on the casino being located in the county. So specifically, whenever someone puts money in a slot machine, a portion of that comes back to Dauphin County. The funds that the county receives are to be used for municipal grants. And so that's how the gaming grant program was created. The act also goes on to identify who is eligible to receive a grant. And so it specifically calls out the host municipality, East Hanover Township, where the casino is located. They're automatically eligible to apply for a grant. It also identifies the 5 contiguous municipalities, those that surround East Hanover. So Derry, Middle Paxton, Brush, South Hanover, and West Hanover townships are automatically eligible to apply for the grant. The act also identifies Dauphin County, the host county. So when the county put the program together, I wasn't around then, but when they put the program together, they wanted to make it have a broader impact. And so that's where we get into this thing about sponsorship. And so all the other municipalities in the county can apply for a grant if they have a sponsor. The same goes for non-municipal entities. They can apply for a grant, but only if they have a sponsor. And there are a few ways to get sponsorship. So the municipalities that I already named, East Hanover, Derry, Middle Paxton, Rush, South Hanover, and West, they are eligible to sponsor applicants if they desire to do so. They don't have to, but they can. They can come up with their own process or requirements. The only thing, they can't charge an applicant to be their sponsor. In addition to that, applicants or non-contiguous municipalities can go to Dauphin County and say, you know, I'm a non-contiguous municipality, I'm going to apply for a grant, will you sponsor my application? Typically that, you know, is approved. There's not a whole lot you have to show if you're a municipality. And then non-municipal entities, they can go to any of the municipalities that are automatically eligible. They can also sort of team up or partner with a non-contiguous municipality and say, hey, will you join in my application and help me get the county sponsorship? And so that's another very common way we'll see non-municipal entities go to like the city of Harrisburg or Borough of Steelton, Susquehanna Township, and say, you know, will you be my co-applicant and ask the county to sponsor the application? And then the final way, which has seen some changes over the past couple of years, is if an applicant thinks that their project has a county-wide impact. So let's say that there's an American Red Cross or a Salvation Army that's proposing, like, you know, a food bank project or something that, you know, it's open to everyone in Dauphin County and almost anyone can benefit from their project, or it covers the entire area of the county. They can go directly to the county and say, you know, this project I'm proposing to do impacts the entire county. Last year, there were some revisions to the guidelines that required applicants to show the population that they serve in the county, as well as the geographic area that they serve. How many municipalities is your project reaching in order to show their countywide impact? A little bit later, we'll get into that more, and also some additional revisions that are being proposed this year to that countywide type of sponsorship. So anyway, we don't want to spend too much time on that, but once you get eligible or sponsored, then you get into putting the application together. What needs to be in there? What sort of projects are eligible to be funded? How much should you be asking for? You know, what's too much or outlandish, or what makes sense? That kind of thing. We've heard a little bit about leverage. You know, how are you going to pay for the project? Are you making a 100% request, or are you out there getting other funding sources, or putting some of your own funds, capital investment into the project? And so in the guidelines that you have, but also that, you know, have been posted over the years, it lays out the categories of types of projects that the Gaming Act identifies as being eligible. And so that's where you get into your public safety and emergency services, transportation, infrastructure, human services. So those are identified for the public to be able to see, you know, does my project fit into those eligible uses of the funds? Once they get past that, then they really need to be thinking about the important dates. And so each year, the Gaming Advisory Board will sort of set a timeline of when certain things are due, when you need to make sure you have your sponsorship request into the county, when you need to make sure the application is submitted. The application deadline is always a hard date. It doesn't change. If you miss it, you miss it. If it's not postmarked or in a box or in a hand by a certain time, that's it. Over the years, we're also seeing some, you know, things that have happened either with the mail or couriers or third parties supposed to deliver it. The deadline is the deadline. The board also will set forth a schedule in terms of holding the hearings, to hear from the applicants, and then ultimately making your recommendations that you put forth to the county commissioners so they can vote on how the funds are awarded. Once the awards are made, applicants are required to enter into a grant agreement with the county. So they will go through that part of the process where they're provided with the grant agreement that needs to be executed. That will identify how the grant will be administered. So some of the questions that we just heard from the public are, you know, to show documentation or proof in order to access the funds. Who do I contact for that? How long do I have to spend the money to complete the project? So those sorts of things are covered in the agreement. Beyond that, process just will start over each year. But in the meantime, there's also projects that are being administered while you're starting the next cycle, and on and on. During the administration, you know, Brooke is tasked with dealing with questions that come up or issues of things may change with the project. The condition may make it more difficult or impossible. And so that becomes part of the administration as well. Sometimes applicants will ask if they have certain issues come up, can the funds be reallocated? So there are all sorts of things that come up during the administration of grants. Anything else you think we should touch on?
A good overview.
Any questions?
I have a question. Are all of the proceeds that are received from the casino issued as grants, awarded as grants? So if $10 million is received from the casino to the county, are all $10 million awarded as grants?
So that's sort of a loaded question because the county receives and a local share assessment that is designated for grants. They also receive a portion that is discretionary or unrestricted. And so this board does not typically have a role with regard to the unrestricted or discretionary funds that the county receives, but they receive additional money from the casino.
And is that in the act?
That is discretionary, yes. The county also receives table games money, but that's not part of this program. It's not part of the slot revenue or the iGaming revenue.
There's a
And so
question.
this board doesn't.
And that was a question I was already asked, knowing I'd be a member of the board.
Yeah,
So then how do people find out where the discretionary funds are used that come from the casino?
that would be a question. Probably the commissioner's office, because it's not
We don't.
under this board.
Okay, very good.
So later on, we'll talk a little about the financials and how this board, you know, gets an idea of what's available, you know, within the program to award. But in terms of the discretionary funds, that's not something that's been, that's not administered, I guess, by the IDA or
Understand.
or recommended.
We
by this
process
board.
the back end. Set up. So that makes sense.
Anything under discretionary is not on these list.
I don't think so.
No, they are
This is
the
very
awards
restricted.
that the commissioners approved.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, it's a fresh.
And
Oh, no,
at some point, sometimes we have some unrestricted grants that then put in our office to administer, and they would be added to that list for our tracking.
Okay.
But where that money is, how much they have for that is in our office until we're assigned to administer it.
This may be water over the dam, but what is the percentage that the commissioners receive in discretionary funds against the total dollar amount available? Is there a percentage?
So under the Gaming Act, the local share assessment is 2%.
Okay,
So half of it is restricted or for gaming grants and the other half is discretionary.
discretionary.
However, part of the discretionary under the Gaming Act goes to two other counties. So the local share assessment is 2% on the slot machine revenue. 1% is restricted to municipal grants. The other 1% is discretionary. That discretionary portion under the Gaming Act, 280,000, I believe, goes to Lebanon County, and I say 280, and then 50,000 goes to Schuylkill County. And that was under an amendment after the original Gaming Act was enacted. And East Hanover Township also gets a direct share from the, we call it the slot machine operation fee that the casino pays every year. The township gets a direct share from that.
Then they can also apply. They get direct,
Yes,
Yes.
do you happen to know what that direct is?
with the direct portion that they get.
Yes,
So we know it at some point in the year, and I'll explain to you why.
okay.
So under the act, like the original language, or the language that's there, the portion that they get is based on their, budget in a given year. I don't remember the year off the
Okay.
top of my head.
Okay.
But each year following that, their, share is adjusted by the CPI.
Okay.
And so however that changes, that's how their share is determined. So we can tell you what they got for 2024 because it's final and it was, distributed to them already. What we would do, and I'll explain this in more detail, is we can help you by like projecting throughout the year what we think you'll get based on how the CPI has changed. But we can confirm at some point during the year how much they actually.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then East Hanover, Lebanon County gets a flat direct share, $160,000 each year.
So Lebanon County gets 280,000 and they also get 160,000.
East Hanover, Lebanon
East
County.
Got it.
County is the one.
Sweet.
I mean, two.
East Hanover County gets
One.
one.
160.
Are the operational expenses for the board then paid through the discretionary funds that the commissioners get? So like for your firm and any other consultants or any other type of, necessary third-party services, is that how
Out of
they're
the
paid?
discretionary portion, yes.
In our portion of our office administration.
So administer the grant.
So then as board members, we get a copy of that reconciliation of expenses that are expended for the operation of.
That would go to the IDA advisory board. The IDA,
Industrial.
Yep.
That's who would pay those expenses.
it's, the gaming program is administered by the IDA board, and they are the ones who will review and see those financials each month.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how it works.
Yeah,
Right, right, right.
I
You
want
got the newbies here.
yeah, I want to know how it works and how the pieces work and how, I just want to know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sorry for asking
No,
very
yeah,
relevant questions, but it's kind of,
it's all
Well, it's
new.
questions we've been asked, or it's questions that people sit around and go,
How does that work? Yeah.
Well, and we do the pre-application meetings with grantees every year, and I think I've met with, I've only been doing this for 2 years now, but I've met with people year after year, and they still don't fully understand it, so yeah, it's a complicated program.
and one of the common questions that we receive is they watch the commissioners meeting, they take a look at all the awards and they're like, they said that the 2% generated $10 or $11 million, but they only awarded $5 million in grants. So the general public wants to know, where's that other $5 million go? Because there's never a discussion about discretionary or unlimited or unrestricted.
Mhm.
So I think that's a general disconnect with the public, that they don't understand that gap. So I think as a board member, we have a duty to be able to explain that and tell them
Yeah.
where that goes. And if the public wants to find out, they can go to the Industrial Development Authority and look at those financial reports, which I would imagine are public record every month.
They are, yes.
Very good.
Any other questions?
And I guess since I'm into this board process too, this board is an advisory board. So they don't make decisions that are binding, like the IDA or like the Board commissioners. So maybe they just need to, they certainly have input on everything. But if you say, whatever you say, it can still be, I guess in a sense, overruled by the other. Obviously, your work is important to bring it together.
Well, if it wasn't,
Yeah,
there'd be
it's
no reason for us to be here.
extremely important.
So I'm guessing that by the act, it requires a board be established. Correct.
So the Board of Commissioners established the Gaming Advisory Board to review applications, questions, get the information, and make recommendations.
Good. And then what is the act number? What is the gaming, the act? You keep saying the act, what is the
Sure,
actual number?
so the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development and Gaming Act is under Title IV of the Pennsylvania Consolidated Statutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's, the reference.
Some certifications on GAB for PA CX section 1101.
There you go, thanks.
Thank you.
And so that's just, the first section of the app, you'll be able to access the rest of it.
George had mentioned briefly about a lot of your time we spend at hearings. And so once we get to the point where the applications have been submitted and they're being reviewed, the board sets aside about 5 days where they hold hearings. Over the years, the program has grown so much that every applicant is not going to get a hearing. So it's just there's more applicants than the number of time slots available, even with meeting 5 days for about 8 hours almost, or 7 hours or so, with 30-minute time slots. I think it allows for maybe like 13 or so. At some point, the schedule will be put together where your applicants would share the 30-minute slots, just trying to get as many, in front of you as possible, so people can be heard. Following those 5 nights of hearings, those that don't get their own individual hearing, the board will then have one public meeting where all the additional applicants are invited. It may be that their application is a repeat project or repeat request, or it's a very small amount, something like that, that wouldn't take 30 minutes to explain. So they may get 5 minutes or so. If they have something to update or additional information to provide, all applicants get questions about their applications, regardless if they have a hearing or not. And that you'll get all that information to be able to review. Once you get through the hearings and the public meeting, then you'll have your meeting with making recommendations that will be presented to the commissioners. And we, along with George, assist you with put together the presentation with your recommendations, answering some of the questions that you raised today. How much is here? Where does this come from? Why are you doing this? Because gaming access that this has to be done, kind of thing. What are the different categories and how the funds can be used? We even go as far as to show, this percentage is going to infrastructure, this percentage is going to transportation or emergency services. These are the additional applicants that apply that aren't being recommended. The public can see this was a brief description of the project and how much they requested.
It seems like there are so many small grants that obviously take a lot of time to process and manage and administer. What is the commissioner's thoughts on trying to maybe consolidate so that larger amounts can go to more publicly necessary projects to accomplish greater things for the public instead of all these dozens and dozens and dozens of small grants to private businesses? I mean, wouldn't it make sense for the administration of the program to consolidate all these grants instead of so many tiny little grants to relocate a private business from one municipality to another? I'm just curious, what is the commissioner's vision on that? Like, I have the pleasure of being around when this was established and a member of emergency services. And it was my understanding that, when it was established was for what you explained, basically to benefit the public. And it seems like, it's really kind of strayed from that a little bit, where many projects are now for private businesses and for-profit organizations. So wouldn't it make sense to benefit the public if that was the intent and purpose of the act, for them to be consolidated for the municipalities and those that can direct the funds to assist more of the public in that way, instead of administering hundreds of grants? So I mean, do you know what the commissioner's vision is? I mean, Mr. Connor, do you know, like, what is the county's vision? Like, what is their intent and purpose? Like, what is it to try to, get as many small ones out to many people, or to assist the greatest members of the public with the grants?
I think those are great questions. I don't know if we know today. I can tell you that, it's changes. This last grant cycle, there were no awards to for-profit entities.
Like distilleries and restaurants?
This last,
The last
the
round.
last awards in
Last
May of
round.
this year, there weren't any for.
I was reading them in this that you presented.
Yeah,
That was
2025
mine.
awards.
That's 2024 and back. The 2025 awards are not on that list because they are not uploaded into the budget. The first column of this grant, it's a grant number 2024 dash, then 3 other numbers.
Right.
That tells you what grant year. So this is just from last year's awards, going back to whatever's still open.
I see.
The awards for 25 will be added to this list once we upload it into our budgeting program.
Understand.
They
Thank
don't
you.
have grant agreements.
Yeah.
And apologize for not understanding.
Yeah, no.
That's fine. She's gonna explain it.
So then these
Yeah.
grants are still open, waiting.
Some of them are open. You'll see, funds available, that some of them are zeroed out. It's just what has been awarded, in past.
Yeah. So when I say that it's changed, so like this past May 2025, when the awards were made, there were applications from for-profit entities, but none of them received an award. Last year, when the guidelines were revised, there was language, private entities that were applying that, were new, or, startups, and, should the commissioners really be funding, you getting your business off the ground kind of thing. So there were changes along those lines. There was a time, I think maybe a couple years ago, it was almost like, a little bit to a bunch of people instead of larger amounts to fewer applicants, sort of what you're saying. But then there were years that wasn't the case, where, larger amounts were going to projects. So it changes, but it makes sense to want to know, what's the vision or policy in terms of, how the awards should be made.
And I think as a board, if our goal is to make recommendations to the commissioners, I think we need to know what their vision is and what the intent and purpose of the process is. Otherwise, it's really wasted time for us to do that. So I think we really should know what is that vision, like what do they look.
And we can get that for this year, once the applications start rolling in. I'm sure George will be having the conversation with the commissioners to get that idea.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll discuss that. COVID hit in 2020, we eliminated the amount you could apply, right? The max is 75,000. It wasn't always like that. So that being said, what that did was that stretched the program out and assisted more people with a lower amount you could apply for. But what you're saying, which I kind of agree, the larger grants are probably more beneficial to a municipality or public service or EMA, whatever it may be. A larger grant would fund more of their request, and they wouldn't have to come back as much every year, because you probably could pay for a fire truck or a pump truck or whatever it may be, police equipment, whatever it may be. Pay for all of it instead of piecemealing and phasing out projects due to not having enough dollars to do that. So,
Well, thank you. If you could get direction from the commissioners, that would be
Absolutely.
very helpful, I think, for us.
yeah.
I've had a couple conversations with Mike, and he hasn't solidified. If I take his word for our conversations, he wants to get back to what he was making. we'll let you get it from the horse's mouth.
And I think that was Commissioner Hartwick's public comment when the
Yeah,
board was selected. I think that was, Commissioner Hartwick specifically stated that he's glad to see that there's emergency service representatives back on to return the program to where it originally was started. So,
yeah, I think they all, want to kind of get back to that. But if there is something that has an economic impact to the county, it is a for-profit, like, say like a place that's a lot of employees that may lose their jobs, impact that, keep those jobs in there. Dauphin County, we want to see that too, so I don't want to ever restrict
I think you have to see what each
what
year,
it is.
what applies,
Yeah.
and what the vision is for each area.
Evaluate how it comes.
thank you.
In fact, Dan, I saw you on Friday night with the commissioner. He sort of had the same, I felt that he had the same kind of a message. I know our meeting was brief at the festival. So,
I was there too.
Yeah, I think they, as George said, they want to make sure that they don't have, if they have an unwritten or written policy, no for-profits, we also don't want to waste their time soliciting for-profits just to say no. Because I think you did have a lot of them apply this year, and it was kind of a blanket no. So I think we need to get that direction. If it's totally geared on emergency service type activity, then
I mean, or infrastructure, if a municipality needs a bridge,
yeah,
if there's a bridge that they can't afford, I mean, that provides service to everybody in the county that would drive over that bridge, or any kind of a thing that would assist, flood prevention or, catastrophe prevention or response. And, I think that would be what I would like to see. How does this money benefit the most people in Dauphin County? And I think that's really what would I think would be the fairest use of the money. Whatever they cost.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess this would be for Steve, you, George too, probably been involved in the program the longest. What percentage of the time, or if they're not exact, do the commissioners usually take the recommendations of the gaming board? Like how often do they change that up? Say we give a list of, 30 grants to give out to them. How often do they usually go with what the advisory board says?
Pretty much.
It's very rare that there are changes. So that's what they put you there for, to review the applications and put your best list forward.
Yeah, I'd say Mike, it's pretty close to 100%, I would say. I mean, rarely since I've been here from inception, there hasn't been a year that they really, canceled 10 or 20 grants.
Right.
They take your recommendations seriously and.
There may be a
Those most
few
of their
tweaks
boards.
here and there, but for the most
not
part,
many, Not many.
Okay, thank you.
yep, Jim.
Go ahead.
Trying to understand this.
Yes.
Well, we'll get to that.
We will?
Yep, down on administration and grants.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for indulging.
This isn't making sense.
Okay, we'll get there.
And if you have more questions after the meeting, we'll stay here and answer them. Nothing to do. No kids grown. No baseball games.
That's what we do.
Not to say I'm doing.
Any other questions? So we're gonna move on to the election of officers, so someone else can run the meeting.
You guys know
We need a
Robert?
chairman, basically.
Yeah, we need a chairman to run the meetings. Robert, does anybody here know Robert's rules and know how to run a meeting? So you guys have any idea on who wants to be the chairman of this board and conduct the meetings? Because you're gonna take over once we vote. You'll take over the agenda.
Super soon.
Tim Shetto.
Second.
So we,
Is
so
that a
the,
motion?
so the board needs to elect a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary. It's our understanding that the commissioners have typically appointed a chairman. That hasn't happened. So we don't know if a change will be made or not, but in order to move forward and conduct business, it is our recommendation that the chairman be elected along with the vice chairman and secretary.
And I would say normally in past practices, the chairman's been from East Hanover Township.
And that would,
No.
that would be,
George, I thought we were friends, man, come on.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying.
Well, that's past practices.
That's past practice.
It worked.
But it doesn't matter, I mean, you know, you guys make the decision,
I
it's
don't think
something.
there's anything in the,
And the, yeah.
in the
doesn't
walls
have
that needs to be East Hanover.
No, I'm just saying it's always.
Yeah, we made this year.
I nominate Tim Shatto.
Tim, you wanna do it? If you don't wanna do it, it's.
does anyone else like to do it?
I'll be here, let me see, right there with you.
Dad, you're.
Congratulations.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
How much work is there in the chairman position?
You're just running the meetings. I mean,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
You're, the running the meetings at this point, if we can get to. The hearings are a little bit more involved just because you're going over the comments with the applicants, but it's not like there's more
we'll be there.
homework than.
All
yeah,
of us.
I mean, we'll be there, like,
Right.
we'll be there.
No, yeah.
We'll be there. You'll just be running the meeting. So when the hearings come, the applicants come in, you'll introduce yourself. They'll introduce themselves and you'll tell them, okay, go tell us about your project. But you're gonna be facilitating the meetings, right? If there's something comes up that you don't know, I mean, I'm there, Brooke's there, Latoya's there, Preston, we'll be there to help you out. I mean, we're not gonna be there by yourself. But you'll be conducting the meetings.
And all of the board members should be reviewing the
Right.
applications. I mean, so really, it's just running the board meetings.
I'm gonna be here every meeting. I didn't step into the step to be in the backside.
I would certainly support you if you want to be the chair.
I'll take the chair.
Okay, so do we have so the first nomination didn't get a second, but that's what we'll say.
Right.
And so is there another nomination for
I would
chairman?
like to nominate Pat Leonard to be the chair.
I'll second that.
I knew you would.
Thank you.
Hang on.
Thank you, Pat.
You're hang up.
You got a lot of here.
Thank
Well, we all have a lot of
That's fine.
As long as people are there to help me out.
I will be,
We're here.
I will be there.
So I'd like to call, are there any questions or discussion with regard to the nomination on the floor? No? Okay, so I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the nomination passes 4-0. Is there a nomination for the vice chair?
Nominated Tim, right?
If you want me to be your vice, I will be your vice.
I'll nominate Tim.
We might hear you do.
You guys are gonna be funny.
Don't be giving out my secrets.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Hearing none, the nomination passes 4-0. Are there any nominations for secretary?
I'll nominate Mike Everson.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, would you like to be secretary?
I learned that a long time ago.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the nomination passes 4-0.
Could somebody just continue to take notes for today's meeting, considering I'm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have the recorder. We have the recorder. We're good. And it's being recorded.
You record?
We
Yeah.
record and live stream on YouTube.
Awesome, thank you.
So now that we have a chairman in Mr. Leonard, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Leonard.
It's Pat.
I'm
I appreciate that. Okay, we'll call for the approval of minutes, May 5th, 2025.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion.
And you're taking notes, somebody is taking notes.
Yeah, so I take the notes and do the
Okay.
minutes, and you're welcome to take your own notes, but
Nope.
Yep.
Motion's been made and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is the Hollywood Casino Financial Summary and Projection.
Sure. So, whenever the board meets, we typically are prepared to provide some sort of update with regard to the performance of the casino. And so, just so you know, the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board reports their financials on a monthly basis. It's available to everyone on their website. They do report on a fiscal year though. And so they run from July 1 to June 30th. And so where we are right now, it's June 9th. We only have figures through April. Typically around the middle of the month is when you'll get the prior month. We don't have the May financials yet. But what we do know is that the gaming statewide overall was up about 11%. So things, continue to do well statewide with all of the gaming. So there's slots, there's table games, there's iGaming, there's sports wagering, VGTs, all kinds of things since the expansion a few years ago. In terms of the Hollywood Casino, which is most relevant to this board, their April 2025 revenue was up 25% over last April for all of their gaming. In addition to that, slot machine revenue was only down slightly, a little over 1% in the month of April, when you compare it to April of 2020.
Is that trending because of all the additional online gaming? So the traditional slots are going down?
So that is an excellent question.
Because you said only 1%, so you were expecting it to decrease?
Because iGaming at the Hollywood Casino is the highest in the state. The internet style gaming, so they have slots, tables, and poker. And the Hollywood Casino performs at the top in the category of iGaming. And so they can continue to increase like month over month, year over year almost when it comes to the iGaming. From April, well, if you compare April 2025 to April 2024, their iGaming was up 33.5%.
And then is iGaming subject to the 2% calculation for the local share?
For Dauphin County, yeah. For that facility, yes. Interesting, under the Gaming Act, depending on the type of the category of the facility, location, all that kind of stuff is different in terms of how they are assessed, if they are assessed, how it's used, and all that kind of stuff.
So the
But
slot,
obviously, we focus on Dauphin County and how that works.
so the slots went down 1% and the other one up 33%.
Right.
So a large
They're
net
not
gain.
concerned if, slots fluctuate too much since the iGaming came on, which was, so the law was expanded in 2017 to add that, but it didn't start to show up until 2020, or into 2021. So Georgia mentioned earlier, during COVID, initially there were concerns of closures and, that the revenue would significantly drop. And right around that time, iGaming started, kind of helped it to maintain somewhat. But even since then, the iGaming portion has continued to increase. Any other questions on that?
Is there a dollar figure that you can,
For
for April?
Sure. So for
I think you sent those to us.
Yes.
But I couldn't.
So no, what was sent to you was to give you an idea of,
24.
it was the final for the whole year.
You wouldn't let me print it out. Again, it might have been my computer.
So it was to give you an idea of what the financial performance looks like for all the facilities
Yes,
in the
yeah,
Commonwealth.
I saw it on.
And that was 2024 for the whole year.
Okay.
And so that would have been the final numbers. And when you get those final numbers, then you know what's available in grants.
Okay.
When we don't have a full year, we have to look at it and just sort of, follow throughout the year to, watch the performance, basically. Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Any other questions? Sure.
All right. I'm looking at a lot of different figures,
Mhm.
and maybe it's just my being new to this, but on, because I'll tell you this. I'm only looking at occupancy numbers. So,
Yeah.
all right. At the bottom here, highlighted, this is on slides. Local share, 2%, if I'm reading this right, 2,706,656. And yet there's another, I can't tell if that's a subtotal
The
somehow.
1.3 that's highlighted,
Yeah,
that's just half of it.
1.1353, is that
That's half of the 2.7.
why?
Why? Because when we get down to how much is available for grants, half of it goes to municipal grants, half of it is discretionary.
So what this board is in 2024, grants reward in 2024, what this board was operating off of was 1 million.
That's only a portion of it. That's only a portion.
I think it was around $5 million, right?
No.
Where'd you get 5 million?
In May of 2025, the commissioners had available to award 9.7 in restricted funds. They awarded a little more, they added some from their unrestricted. About a couple $100,000 to make it 10 million. But I will explain.
This is
And
confusing.
an
I'll be
attorney,
honest with you,
I
this is
will say-
confusing.
I'm gonna help you out.
We got you.
Yeah,
It's gonna take a little time, probably as we work through the process, we'll probably start to understand the terminology and the acronyms and.
Jim, it's your first day. It's your first day in school. Oh, gee.
I don't like the teacher.
It's the first day of class. Just relax.
George, you got through the other day.
I'm not gonna get a math test.
Thank God.
That's
I
it.
went to get it, I got to get it.
So did I. So we're both in trouble though.
You never get it, that's that.
That's scary. 'cause my
Unless
husband
it's
went to
double
make sure that
zeros
he's an
behind the
accountant.
number, it doesn't make sense to me.
I just have one quick question. You may have said it.
Sure.
Here, when do you let us know basically what amount we're giving out?
Sure. So we know, it's usually not until mid or late January of the following year that we would know the number for sure. That is exact, but we project, or, based on the performance.
And is the pre-meeting still take place? The pre-grant meeting?
Yeah.
And it's starting like August?
That will be discussed.
Yeah.
It's all new this year.
You guys are eager. That's good. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Is this not customary?
Well, I mean, we've had some board members that have been on the board for 10 years.
I
So we just walk
But
in.
yeah, I mean,
I understand.
Any other questions for Latoya? Report on administration of gaming grants. Brooke?
So each of you was provided a exported Excel spreadsheet from our Oracle budgeting system that we use. The DC grant first column is just their grant number. It's how they are tracked within our system based on the awards. The description is the next column. It just tells us kind of what the project is, who the organization is that received the awards and for what project. The total budget for 24 and trying to think of when we started. So 24 grants would list the actual award amount. We started a new budgeting program or system, Oracle, in 23. So if you go back to the grant awards that are listed as 2023, the budgeted amount most likely is not the award amount. It is what was left over and carried into the new system from our old system. So
And that
they,
was a countywide.
that was
change.
countywide change.
So when it says total budget, is that the award amount? in
For 24, yes. In 23 and back, South Hanover Township could have received $50,000, but by the time we put all of the awards into our new system, they spent 25 of it. It will show budgeted amount of 25.
Understood.
So we did not bring past data into the new system. So 23 and back is just what they had at the time that our financial coordinator put everything into the system. And then you can see how much they expended and then how much is remaining in their grant.
How long is the grant cycle? How long do they have?
So they have 3 years from the date of the agreement being signed. Some of these grants you will see are older grants. Like if you go back to the back page, the 2019 Parks and Rec, that's an MOU that remains open. Some of these have extensions. Unfortunately, there isn't a note section or a way of putting in if there's an extension or if there's changes to the scope. There's nothing in the system. That would be me putting in the data each time I pull the report to show you what's available. If you have questions on some of the older agreements and awards, and just shoot me an email, I can tell you what's going on with them. But this is what we pull from the system. You can see everybody that we are tracking and what's going on. If there's a double line, it simply just means, and I'm not a financial person to understand the budgets, years, and timeframes, but if there's 2 for one grant, it's the 24 budget and the 25 budget, and it just shows up dual. The way that our report shows now, we're working on getting these a little cleaner for you, so it's just one line item per award, but that's why there's sometimes a duplicate.
So one thing like when you get these, you may want to look at, on the very first page, you see that the sheriff's office received a grant 2024, and the expenditures are 0. So, they haven't spent anything, and it's been a year. Have they in contact with you? Did they extend the, time to draw down the funds, those kinds of
So you're saying they were awarded $67,200,
last year.
2024?
Yeah, they applied in 23, the award was given
Applied
in
to
24.
23, so that I didn't understand.
Yeah, so it's a 2-year, like this year is a 25-26 cycle. You apply in 25, you get awarded in 26, so your grant number will be 2026, whatever.
But we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
It's working with that.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that.
I'm just trying to understand, they were awarded $67,000,
Mhm.
and it says funds available 67.2,
Mhm.
so it means they hadn't spent anything
Exactly.
at
Correct.
all?
So my question would be.
Why?
Exactly, yeah. So Brooke may know that. They may
Yeah,
have reached
so
out and
actually-
said,
They were working on the acquisition of their vehicle. I actually just got the invoice today. So they requested to waive their March 1. So you get an award. In the past, you were required to spend money by March 1 of the next year. So they requested to waive that March 1 deadline. But that does not change the 3-year
Okay, so
expiration date.
who granted the waiver?
Our office administers that.
Okay.
We do that too. With Brooke and I make the decision on that.
Okay.
We evaluate the situation. Basically, we just want to know that, kind of along the lines that I was asking this gentleman, are you gonna get the project done, and do you have the money to do it?
In 3 years.
Yeah, like if you can't, then we're not gonna grant it.
Or then in 3 years and you didn't spend the money.
Right.
It is
So-
revoked.
And so, yeah,
Where does that, and that brings up my question, where does that money go?
It goes back to the county.
into the discretionary.
Undiscretionary.
Undiscretionary.
But that rarely happens.
Yeah, I mean, I work with the administration to, or the,
Fine, or-
I don't think we've.
And I can
we've taken a
say
couple
in
of these, but not a lot.
and since I've been here in
Yeah.
2011,
Yeah, yeah.
I work with the awardees to get their funds used.
Brooke, so, I like the way you're doing this, it makes sense, because then we can see like, how much was the grant for?
Yeah,
How much did they actually, where is it currently at? Dauphin County Critical Incident Stress Management Team, they requested 11,136. It looks like they spent 11,077.92, which left a balance of 5808. Then it looks like a second grant,
what number are you looking at, 2020?
2024-102.
Okay.
So it looks like, well, we had $58.08 left, so then did they submit an addendum in that amount?
No, so that is what I'm saying about the budget year. So in 2025, sometime this year, Autumn had to open up a new budget cycle. So it just took over what was left over
I
in
understand.
in the 24 budget cycle.
I understand.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they don't have two grants with $58 left. It just,
Transition to
yeah.
Oracle, so now
it's in the 25
I
open
understand.
budget cycle.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Brooke?
Yeah, if you have nothing to do tonight and you wanna review these, send me an email and I can walk through each grant. You can just call me and I can tell you what's going on.
Question.
Yeah.
With the, on the line where it says funds available now.
Mhm.
How can you tell when the initial grant was awarded?
So that's another thing what we use is not a grant tracking program.
Okay,
We are working with what we have.
okay.
So there's not an option in the system for me to tell you when the agreement was fully executed.
So you don't know.
I do know, because I have
You
it
know, but I
Excel,
mean,
yeah.
for public consumption. or whatever.
Why would they not buy you grants?
Great question.
Out of the unrestricted funds.
That sounds like a great unrestricted funds project.
Well, no, we just got an award for a
It's
grant
ridiculous
system.
for one person to have to understand these grants.
Mike, we just got an award for a grant system. I've been complaining about it for years. We just got an award this year, so we are getting a grants management system.
But did it come from the restricted or
No,
unrestricted?
it came from the restricted. We had to apply like everyone
From
else.
this, I can't,
Yeah.
as new as I am, I can't understand when their initial grant was and when's the 3-year period end.
It was-
Well, I mean, 24, they're gonna be done in 27 sometime. I mean,
But the,
Do
when, no,
that.
this is saying,
And it's
so far, I'm still looking at the first line.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
When were they awarded the 67,000? What
So-
year?
24.
In 24?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So any of these where you have a balance of left owing means basically the same thing. Take 2024-203, means down Historical Society.
Mm-hmm.
They were awarded $7,128. They've not spent it yet.
No, so there's two lines for 203. In the budget cycle of 2024, they did not spend anything. But in 25, see there's two lines.
Yeah.
And then the second line has a zero balance.
Okay.
So they spent money since the 2025 budget cycle was opened. So they have no funds. They use their funds completely.
Georgie,
Okay, the same numbers. All right.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So the
All right.
24 budget goes into the 25 budget.
I'm with you.
so
Got it.
again, I'm trying to learn how this
Yeah.
works. But some of this just doesn't make logical sense. So the Industrial Development Authority ultimately oversees the grant program, right? The
Financial.
Industrial Development Authority has full authorization over the unrestricted funds.
No, no.
Commissioners do.
Commissioners do.
The unrestricted program, whatever, is under the
But
commissioners.
why wouldn't the overhead expenses to run the grant program not come out of the unrestricted funds?
They do,
Well, he said he had to apply for a grant to get a software
Agreed.
program.
but his
Agreed.
office does apply for.
And that makes no sense. So who then, as a board, do we send a request for consideration that the county commissioners reevaluate how that works? Because that makes zero sense. Because this is taking money away from community-based organizations that could provide that money to the members of the community to help them. So the administrative costs should come out of the unrestricted funds so that the board can release funds to the community to benefit the community. So that, to me, that makes, now, I know nothing about this. This is my first meeting ever. But just as a resident of Dauphin County, that makes no sense, no logical sense to me. And so that would be the commissioners would then hear our concern? Where's the correct forum for us to go? If we find things along the way that we think, it just doesn't seem right, who do we go to with that? Commissioners, okay, thank you. Yeah, you sure do, Chairman. With all our concerns go to you and you go to the commissioner.
What's the ETA for,
We were here before.
you guys get a grant set up for Brooke to use?
Yeah, we're currently gonna be doing an RFP for that, probably in the next month or so hopefully we have it to go this
So
summer.
potentially you'll have something to go and manage this new grant cycle?
Correct.
Okay.
You should add,
Brooke?
you should add something years ago.
Yeah.
Again,
I mean, prior
Prior to
to
this, we were running
Oracle,
manually.
yeah,
Oh my God.
prior to this, we use Excel and
Oh,
track
bro.
everything
Oh my God.
manually, Excel
I'm
for.
thinking it's still-
So you have like 4 grant cycles open at a time and you're inputting in an Excel spreadsheet who you're paying, how much you're
Oh,
paying, and, yeah.
2025.
We did it, because that's how good we are.
First item for the
Easier
commissioner.
because technology is definitely there to make this super easy for you. So-
Yeah,
Yeah.
And when you get people that ask you all kinds of questions, you say, knowing everything.
You don't want to ask commissioners.
no, I mean, that's what our job is, like, we are here to hear your concerns and talk to the commissioners about it, definitely.
Thank you.
So, yeah, again, if you have any other questions, just call me, email me once you look at the spreadsheet.
Any other questions for Rob?
And that was, I'm just trying to give you guys some input. So
No, I appreciate it.
back to the, fire apparatus, whatever it may be, like, when we first started this program, that's all you saw, all the requests were fire pumpers, fire trucks, ladder, fire ladder, whatever it may be. So the board got upset about awarding all these different fire apparatus, and they went to the commissioner and said, look, we need to do a fire study. Cause you got, he's hanging over with a ladder truck, and Derek wanted a ladder truck, and whoever wanted a ladder truck, I'm like, you guys can't share ladder trucks, you're a mile away.
Are we still using that? It's pretty dated, I think 2011.
We were gonna update it, yeah, we never, I don't think we ever updated it.
It hasn't been.
No.
So the board, the commissioner board allowed the game project board to do an RFP, had a fire study done, so they could evaluate
Yeah.
who needed what was necessary in these fire departments. We kind of got a gauge on it, it's kind of along the lines, getting things that are necessary.
That would be helpful. That'd be very helpful.
Next item, review and approve 2025-26 gaming application and policies.
So you received 2 packets. One is a red line and the other is a clean version of the proposed changes or updates to the application packet for the 2025-26 grant cycle. I think it's easier to follow the red line, but that's certainly up to you to see the changes that are being proposed. And so obviously dates will be updated for the current grant year. So that's the first couple of pages. Some of the things I talk about in the overview, you will see when you start to flip through here, the background on the program, the eligible applicants, and sponsorship requirements, uses of the grants, the different categories. I'm on page 2. It talks about that. So there aren't really any revisions that are being proposed there. You did hear George talk about the recommended grant amounts. That's at the top of page 3. And what that is that it says that if you're a non-contiguous municipality and you're making a request, it's recommended that you not request more than $150,000 in the grant cycle. That doesn't mean that you can't come back in a subsequent year and apply again, even if it's for the same project. And it's a recommendation, the same for non-municipal entities that are applying. If you're applying, it's recommended that you not request more than $75,000 in the grant cycle. If either of those types of applicants request more than that, they're asked to show justification as to why they think that they should receive a grant higher than that. There have been instances of, the supply chains, impacting the project and the costs have risen, or, we thought we could do it for this amount, but, a vendor can't get something, or we didn't anticipate this item breaking or going out of service. And so, we didn't plan for that and we need it immediately, and so we need 200 instead of 150, that kind of thing. And so those are recommendations. Following that, then you get into the important dates for the grant cycle. If you see anything that, looks wrong, like the 2024 is still there, let us know. But the recommendation would be to open the grant program July 1 with updated program guidelines that would be posted on the county website and available to those that want to apply. The one change that's being proposed this year is instead of individual pre-application conferences with every applicant, whether you've applied before or it's your first time, it's being proposed that the staff will assist them hold about a handful of like workshop style meetings where the dates will be posted. The public can sort of RSVP or sign up. The thought would be about like 25 to 30 applicants at each meeting or workshop where we'll go over the program guidelines, lay everything out, and get the opportunity to ask questions. In the past, those were individual meetings that were held over a 2.5 or so month time period where we would say maybe meeting with 250 to 300 applicants.
Many of whom probably had the same questions.
Yeah.
So therefore you could address the same types of questions or, the substance of the
Right.
question
And a group.
in a group setting. And then but that's the staff, that's not the advisory board, we're not at the workshops.
Yeah.
Good.
And so they've always been.
Unless you want to go.
No, we're good.
We're all right.
So it's being proposed that during July and August, workshops will be scheduled and held, ideally in one of the spaces in the county administration building that could hold, a decent number of people. And if another location is required, staff will identify that and notify the public. And do you want to add anything on that, Brooke?
No, I think, I don't know if you want to say this now, but the repeat applicants, if we were looking at holding them off Dauphin County campus.
Oh, so we can have a larger.
Yeah, because I think we were planning to do 6 new applicant pre-app meetings or workshops and 2 workshops for repeat applicants and only have them as like 2 options at an offsite location that we need to finalize.
So the thought is to sort of try to streamline that portion of the process, less meetings, fewer dates, including, more multiple applicants instead of individual.
There's locations throughout the county.
No,
No,
Excuse me, what'd you say?
No.
Workshops, are they throughout
they
the
would
county?
be, the new applicants, we would hold them in the commissioner's hearing room.
Okay,
And then the 2 repeat meetings,
We're looking at maybe HU.
Or hack.
somewhere.
but they would be here in the county.
okay, I didn't know if you were looking for locations.
Yeah, no.
so once we get through the pre-application workshops, explaining everything, including that you need to sponsor, how to do that, get working on that as soon as possible kind of thing. The sponsorship deadline or the deadline for submitting your request, which we'll talk about in a little bit, would be September 2nd. And so that's about a month before the application deadline, which would be October 1st. The application deadline last year was also October 1st. In prior years, it was always around September 1st. The timeline got a little shifted last year. And so the proposal is to try to stick with, sort of on the same timeline as last year, maybe move it up a little, but not changing that application deadline. What happens when, the applications come in, we didn't talk about this earlier, but they all come into George's office or to Brooke. One question I did have, so you're gonna have a Dropbox?
No, I have that circled. I want that removed
Okay,
because I want them handing it to people.
okay.
So we're a small staff, so I know it gets to me. I'm not, there will not be a Dropbox.
Especially non-visibility.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just put a box by our door. Yeah, no.
So, so once they come in, they all come to Brooke. They're only submitting one paper copy, they will get scanned and made available for you to be able to review. During the review period, the, staff and will determine if there are any sort of questions. If you have questions for the applicant, you let us know, that kind of thing, because that will help to get prepared for the hearings. We are proposing to hold the hearing at the beginning of December. In the past, they were mostly, well, not mostly, in the past, they were in November, except last year.
Before Thanksgiving.
They were always in November before Thanksgiving. Last year, because the timeline was shifted and started later, they were in January, and everyone at this table felt like that was not ideal. Coming off the holiday, having the board ready for those in-person hearings for 7 hours for 5 days, the first week of January, it just didn't make a lot
Are
of sense.
those days right in a row or they?
No, so we try to stagger them maybe like 2 a week. There may have been a couple of years where there
We did
were
like
three.
I think
a
we
Monday,
do,
Tuesday, Wednesday,
yeah.
and Tuesday, Wednesday, up to next.
So what are the times?
3 to 10.
What's
Yeah,
that?
3 to 10.
3 p.m.
3P to
yes.
10P.
Yeah, and we've never really went to 10. If you're running the meeting, it's gonna be up to Mr. Leonard.
You never know about our questions.
Keep them going, you gotta keep the time.
Yeah.
So the proposal, and that's not, you all have time to set those dates. That's not in this packet.
Okay.
What's in this packet is what the applicants need to know to get their application submitted. And then to give them an idea of what may be coming next. And then also about when they can expect to get it forward. But in terms of scheduling those hearings and the larger public meeting, you have time to set those dates. We would suggest of trying to do it the first couple weeks of December, obviously before the holiday. But we think that would put you in a position to then be able to have that public meeting where, last year, we had like 100 applicants or so on that list. Sometime in January, but not 5 days of meetings in January. The first week. So,
I have a question for Brooke, I
Yeah.
guess. Do you scan them like?
Yes.
Once you review them and they're submitted, they're ready to go, then do you send them to us so we don't get all of them at one time?
Correct, yeah, you will get them all at one time. You will get a file link with every application uploaded in their own individual file.
Okay.
So they are not sent as they come in, they are sent as I have them all tracked. I typically try to have this done like within the week of the deadline date. I track them as they come in, but I don't provide you any of the applications until after everything's in.
Are we allowed to meet outside of these meetings?
not in a group that there would be a quorum.
Will there be a fifth member put on the board?
That's the assumption.
Well, yeah.
So right now, as long as only two of us are together, then we're okay, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't have,
Latoya, I just,
But at no time would you be deliberating on anything in terms of, making some sort of decision.
no, right, but I mean, like, we had a question for each
Yeah,
other about
yeah.
everything that's in here, or, operationally or organizationally, that's not an issue, correct? Okay.
on page 4, can you just take out close of business? Close of business is 4:30. I don't want it to be
Okay.
confused.
Thank you. There's that.
In the application procedures about must
Oh, I
be
see.
delivered by,
Yeah.
maybe just word it differently,
I
just
got it.
So you just wanted to say, must be delivered by 4 PM?
yeah.
Got it.
Is the reason you had the meetings 3 to 10 at night because board members were working during the
Yes.
day?
That's correct.
And it's
Are you
easier
board
for
members
staff.
Working typically during the day, or could you make a 7 AM, 5?
Yeah, no way, I'm not giving up my vacation time.
Not
No
only,
way.
not only that, you have applicants that may be
Work.
working.
Yeah.
You also have staff that need to be here that need to be
We
working.
don't even get paid to park down here. Are you kidding me?
They're all attending.
So just to answer your question, the board did try
Bring it
that.
up, you guys can bring that up.
A couple years ago, the board did try that, so there's experience with that where at least 2 of the meetings, I think, were during the day.
Yeah, it did.
And it's not
I don't see.
preferred. But you also have, again, applicants that, want to present that may have working hours as well. And we try to be sensitive to if you're traveling from Williamstown or Likens or,
Right.
when making the schedule of getting here and leaving here and not,
Right.
getting home at 10 o'clock at night. It's, it can get a little tricky, but we try to, be sensitive to all of that. And then there may be instances, that if you all decide that, on this particular day, we think we all could be ready by 2. So it can be done at 9 or 8:30 or something like that. But as a general practice, it's been about 3 to 10 or 9:30 or so.
And that's what was the average, so come 45 minutes before your scheduled time.
And that's the other thing too, because if you get ahead of schedule, you want to keep moving.
Yeah.
And so there are times where you may get out at 8 because people showed up as they were supposed to, they were prepared, got the information that you asked for, and you think that,
We had a situation a year or 2 ago where applicant had a time scheduled for, I think, like 9 o'clock or 9:30. And they got here like 5 minutes before, and we were done. The board had left, because they were that far ahead
Yeah,
of schedule.
yeah.
And the lady's like, my appointment's at 9:30. I was like, no, your appointment, you should have been here 45 minutes before then. I can't do anything for you because the board went home.
Yeah.
There was nothing we could do.
Right.
So she had went to a non-hearing date, but like that's the thing, if you guys keep it moving and they're here, we take them as they come out.
So on page 4, the majority of the recommended changes there have to do with changing from a pre-application individual conference to the workshop style. And so you'll see those updates there. The information will be posted. They're expected to be held between July 1 and August 29th. Then when we get into the application procedures, that's just telling the applicants when, where, and how to submit their application. And so the updates there are just the typical ones as it relates to dates. This year, the office address has changed, so you'll see an update in that regard. Then we get into the application narrative, and so that's where you find the instructions on what needs to go in the application. I think it was either last year or the year before, there were significant changes in here of just really trying to pull the information out of applicants. You need to have this, who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing it, why you want to do this project kind of thing, so the board can understand what is being proposed and from who and why. There are some other standard things in there, like, what's the project need or problem that you're going to be solving. If your project has any sort of relationship to Hollywood Casino, you need to tell the board that. I mentioned earlier, if you're applying for more than 75 or 150, depending on the type of applicant, what's the justification for that? You need to explain that. If there's any local or community support for your project, you have letters of support or individuals that support why this project should take place. That's typically where you'll see letters from legislators or like petitions signed by a bunch of community members, that sort of thing.
I think myself and Pat and Mike Iverson, we've actually have submitted these in the past, so we're very familiar with that process. I don't know, have you ever submitted one or been, okay. So what I don't want to do is, have you dive into this deep dive to go through each single item, which, I don't know, Pat, I don't know if we actually need to do every single of the items, but Mr. Williams, whatever would be good for you to bring you up to speed on it.
You got a lot of work ahead of you, brother.
I think for you to go through how many pages of these.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read through everything.
Because obviously this has worked well for the prior boards, and the changes that you're making are to make the process more efficient or more accurate, more relevant,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I think it would be kind of premature for us to try to say what we think at this point is good or bad or.
Let me understand something. There's 2 of these, right? The one that's all lined out, is that,
That's
that's the final that came out of this?
Yeah.
All right, now, the other thing, on the lineouts, there's 3 colors. There's some in red, some in blue, and a couple in green. What does the green mean?
So,
Like on page 4, there's a green.
Green just means that it was moved. It wasn't deleted.
it
I'm
moved
sorry, I
from,
didn't hear you.
it moved from another section of the application.
Okay.
She's a smart one.
So like,
So blue is new, green is, it was somewhere else in the document, but it was moved. And red is it's being deleted.
So it's taken out of
Just change.
Change.
change,
Yeah.
and became a change.
so if you look at page 4, that will at the top in the first full paragraph, will not be held after August is in green. That's because if you look 1, 2, on that third paragraph, you'll see in the middle of the red line sentence, pre-application conferences, and then will not be held after August is green in the middle of that sentence. That's because it was pulled out of that and moved up.
Dislocation.
Let's try to understand.
It's fine.
You missed one color, there's yellow on it.
That's, well, the yellow
I
is
see
what I,
yellow on
Brooke
this.
called it.
Thank you, Brooks.
Get rid of that.
Get rid of that.
That's a good idea.
Oh, yeah, you.
So the application narrative is to help applicants, have the important information. So when you get the application, you're not wondering, you still will be wondering, which to be honest with you, because everyone doesn't follow the instructions. But it's there to assist. And the idea is to get the application in a good position for you to be able to review it and understand what's going on.
So if an application comes in and it is structurally flawed, with critical errors, do you just it gets put away, it does not get moved forward, correct?
No, it gets loaded into the system and provided to you for a review, for you to see how, or the
Did they
application.
get the opportunity to make the corrections?
Our office does not provide any grant support
So
for
the
you to
applicant
beef up
gets
your
The
application.
rules and regulations and procedures, they're invited to come to a workshop if they have any questions about it. But then at that point, if they submit a flawed document or document that lacks documentation, then the advisory board say, we can't make a decision on this project because.
Exactly.
So,
Because what the board has tried to do in the past is things that are crucial like a budget. If you don't have that, it's really hard for you to be able to say, we should get an award of any amount, So there is language in here that, warns if you fail to include a budget, your application may not be considered. But unless misses the deadline or it's not eligible, meaning it doesn't have a sponsor, it's going to be presented to you.
So the applications are submitted and reviewed by the board, by staff, by our consultants. Each applicant leading up to the public hearings will receive an email from me with all questions. So if the application isn't as strong as it could be, that may be something in the questions will help maybe make the application more clear. That is really our only effort to get more information.
But who are consultants?
Solicitor.
Solicitor.
Well, that makes it, because when you say consultants, that opens us wide up. Who could that possibly be? So-
It's, it's this.
Yeah.
Our
This is
our
who-
solicitor,
Yeah,
you're here for us.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the only way that.
The board
an applicant-
solicitors.
Yes.
Thank you.
one more question. So this is more, the form, the draft where you lined out everything is more for understanding the
Yes.
changes in this.
Yeah, because you've never seen it.
And this,
before.
and that is why they put more drafts.
Mhm.
Okay.
The only reason why we mark the clean one draft is because you could make changes today and say, well, we think this should be changed. So the clean one may not be
At
final.
what point does the application become finalized?
This, yeah, you're gonna vote today
For that.
Without,
without,
That's why you guys are here, Jim.
this will allow the application process to open.
no, I'm curious, I mean, if this is a draft based on this, is it possible there are other amendments or changes that could be made to this? Is this simply a
Today?
draft, or is this meant to be final?
It is not going to be final because I
So you-
asked that her to change
Okay,
the
I
close of
heard that.
Perfect
business
point, yeah.
and take out the Dropbox. So with our discussion today, they're making notes of what additional changes need to be made.
And then we'll have something
And you'll
else to
make a
vote on.
motion to approve the suggested documents
With your
with
changes.
recommendations of
So
the
you intend to
changes.
come back with something else?
No,
No, we're not gonna meet again.
So
No.
if you
This
tell
is
us,
just to get the application out there for next year.
if
We
you,
do have to.
Right, and
I have a 15-year track record of applications with minor change.
yeah, I mean, typically it's just date changes here and there,
Well,
tweaks.
there's nothing so.
a little bit,
so our solicitors will guide us through, I think, the legality of the application. So in general, this is the same application that has been used for multiple cycles.
Yes.
The only revisions that we're looking at now to approve as a change would be the ones that are indicated in the where they're struck and changed.
yes.
So the document in and of itself, it's the same document which has been used successfully in the past. However, there's been some structural changes to either clean up redundancy or move the location of it, or to increase the effectiveness of the document. Is that correct?
Something-
Correct.
That's a good.
The point is, this will become the final application.
Yes.
With
Yeah, unless we change,
Unless there's
Today.
minor changes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
so then we would make a motion to accept it and make it, at that point, the draft with
the changes.
stated
as
changes.
discussed.
Correct.
Okay, very good. So we keep going through to
Yeah.
see what they are.
Jim, so what's your point? Is there something that you are unhappy with?
no, I'm just trying to understand it.
No,
It's a lot of information to digest.
It is, it is, yeah.
At your first meeting. We apologize.
Thank you.
No, that's,
It doesn't happen like that. I mean, we didn't want it to. You guys should have.
I'm
more
getting
time.
there, I'm getting there, trust me. My apologies to everybody else.
no.
No, you're good.
No, great question.
Apologize to me.
Great questions.
We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Right? We just don't have a lot of time. That's the problem. I mean, I'm not saying today, I'm saying for the program, we gotta get it started. Because really, we can push everything back and meet a couple more times if we want.
But July 1 is open.
Did you hear me say
That's
that?
Well, I mean,
Proposal.
that's.
Because that's the
yeah,
proposed.
And it needs to, because it takes time for, we don't wanna push the end result back into any later to 26 that we would have.
Exactly.
Yeah, because this year affects next year.
Next year, that's
We'll
fine.
start small, roll
So,
it
so,
out.
you know,
Right.
my take on it as a member of the board is to rely on our solicitor to give us that guidance as to what you believe the changes are and how that impacts the entire program.
Right.
In and of itself. So I think as our solicitor, you have to let us know if you're concerned about any of, at least me, not the board, but me, if you have concerns about any of these changes, even if the staff made them, but as a solicitor, if you're concerned about their changes, I'd like to hear from you.
Sure.
If you would tell me that, because you're our solicitor.
Yeah.
So that's why I would like to know if, do you have any concerns or reasons to pause about any of the changes that are being recommended?
No, but I want to point some out to you because you're going to get questions.
Very good.
From the public, from your colleagues, and also, one of the main changes this year is an area that had most of the questions last year.
Very good.
So we're about to get to that. So the main part we just went through was the guidelines itself. And the first appendix is Appendix A, and that's what we call the guidelines for sponsorship. And so, one of the key changes there, I talked about earlier, countywide impact. You're going directly to the commissioners and saying, my project impacts the whole county, I shouldn't have to go to an individual municipality. And so last year, there was language added saying you need to show the population you serve in the area you serve. This year, there is a thought that, well, also if you can show that your project has a substantial impact in the county, you know, whether it's the degree of the problem that you're addressing or the level of service that you're going to be providing, that may be able to get you that direct county sponsorship as well. And so that's the blue you see there on that page that is being proposed this year. for that direct county sponsorship. Okay. You flip right past that section on guidelines for sponsorship, and you'll see the sample letters that are there to assist applicants with requesting sponsorship. So the first letter is pretty much the same as it has been, where a non-contiguous municipality, Susquehanna, Lower Paxton, Pembroke, is coming to the county and saying, can you sponsor our application? Very straightforward. This year, we did take the time to sort of highlight, this is what you need to fill in if you're going to use this template. The major change is when you flip to the next page. In prior years, if you had a non-contiguous municipality that was pairing up with a non-municipal entity, they had to submit 2 letters, one from the municipality, one from the non-municipal. This year it's being proposed that they both sign 1 letter. So if I am ABC nonprofit corporation and I want, I want Highspire to be my co-applicant, I'm going to prepare my letter and sign it, and I'm going to take it to Highspire and say, will you be my co-applicant? You sign this same letter that I signed, so there's 1 letter instead of 2. So that 1 letter will get submitted as a sponsorship request.
That makes sense.
That is being proposed to try to make it easier to understand and more streamlined, instead of 2 letters coming from 2 different entities, so to speak, for 1 application.
And Brooke, that would help you, right?
It would, because a lot of times I get one or the other, and we required both, so this will hopefully.
It was confusing.
And it was confusing for the organizations, because they would think they didn't need to do a letter, and then it's their project. They need to be taking the letter to the municipality.
Gotcha. Okay.
Ask you a question. How does a potential applicant get this?
So it'll be posted on the website, and also they'll be available at the workshop.
But how do they know to come?
So it works on,
The project or the program is so popular
yeah.
that we do not typically advertise saying, hey, this is open.
That's what the question. Is there advertisement of the available?
No, I mean, we are
They're
over
getting calls
budget
already.
without advertising. I mean, last year we had over $20 million of requested funds. We can't afford to advertise, or, I mean, it would just,
We did back in the day, years ago we did, but we don't have to, because it's already oversubscribed. Why would we have to?
You're basically,
How does that affect
requesting
new,
twice as
how
much
does
money
that
as
affect
available.
new applicants
Yeah.
or anybody that
we had
Somebody
over 300
isn't
applications
familiar with the
last year.
process?
Because they'll come to a pre-application conference and say, such and such told me to
And will they be
call.
notified of that available pre-application?
It will be posted on the website of when the application workshops are.
And
being
there are
held.
also municipalities that put the information out
Right.
there, because they want to start they're going to be a co-applicant. Some municipalities require them to come to a public meeting, some require them to make a presentation or submit some sort of summary of their application in order to join in their application. The one thing that we didn't discuss, I will say, is in the past, after meeting with the applicants at the pre-application conference, we would send them an email that included this as well. We would say, you met on this date and we discussed this, here it is again, here's another copy. I don't know if we're gonna do that or not.
I mean,
You'll always have people that said, I didn't know.
I never had,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course.
I think
Been there.
for the workshop meetings, we're asking them to kind of RSVP. I think we're gonna try to do like a sign up genius link, because they are being held in the commissioner's hearing room, which only holds so many. So we can't just have everybody
Right.
show up.
Right.
So we're going to have a sign up link, and then we'll have their contact information, and maybe we can just do a general email to the individuals that attend each meeting. Thank you for coming. Here is this information again.
This staff tries to be extremely helpful and resourceful. I don't know if there are any other ideas of how to do more in terms of, getting the information out there, explaining it.
Then had a good idea to put the video tutorial
Oh.
on. Most people don't do a lot, but I like that.
And I think that
He's gonna do it, right?
I think we were gonna do it once.
there's a lot of opportunities for people to receive the information they need. The website provides information, the documents are available online. There's workshop sessions being scheduled. I mean, I believe the county's making every possible, available resource to make that happen. But I think there's some onus on the applicant that they need to be responsible
And
enough
that's where.
to complete their application, do their own research, do their due diligence, and submit it. I believe that also will then probably follow through with the quality of the applicant and the ability for them to actually follow through and accomplish their project that they're requesting. So my take would be, if you can't follow the guidelines and submit and, complete and proper application, how are you ever gonna follow through with the entire project, through its entirety? So, I mean, I think there comes a point when I think they must be responsible for some of their own, some of their own due diligence in their work. That's just my opinion.
Well, it shouldn't be Brooke having to,
Absolutely,
watch over, being mama bear,
absolutely.
watch over everybody.
But that's the most important statement you said.
Sorry.
Are we doing the
Nobody
most we
likes
can
to
do
know.
to make sure people are aware of the program, are aware of the guidelines? Are we doing our job to do that? That's the most important.
I think we are. I think from my perspective as an outsider, as an object, until today, I wasn't part of this process. But I mean, I would think in general, everyone's aware of it because the publicity every year when the awards are made, that in and of itself, in marketing, it's in all of the major news outlets. Everybody does a news story. It's online, it's available. I mean, I think in general, everybody's aware that this happens. And then I believe if somebody has an interest, they need to reach out to the county.
As mentioned, it's proposed to get rid of the second 2B letter, and just combine it into one. And then the sample letter 3 is if you're going directly to the county commissioners and saying, will you sponsor my application? Because I have a countywide impact or substantial impact. And so this is substantial impact language is added, and then again, highlights are there, so the applicants will know if they're using the template information to do.
If an applicant goes directly to the commissioners, I'm sorry,
You can ask.
then do we even review that
Well,
application?
no, they can't submit it to the commissioners, the request is to Dauphin County, not through municipality, but they still get submitted to Brooke.
But the commissioners would have to agree to sign off.
Well, the
on it.
commissioners have to
Ultimately.
agree on
All
all of them
All
to be
sponsorships.
sponsored.
Even when there's a,
Sponsoring, that doesn't mean they're getting the grant.
Correct.
But the commissioners is who would sponsor.
yes,
They're the sponsoring agency.
even when a municipality is asking,
Right.
And
it's
the
the
three
commissioners,
commissioners have to vote on that?
they do, they do.
Just like convenience.
No,
No,
that's,
Okay.
yeah, good question.
all of the sponsorships are, sponsorship letters are presented at one time. They are submitted to our office, to
Yeah.
me,
Okay.
and then the entire list is given to the Board of Commissioners
Got
for
it.
approval.
Got it.
No matter if they're a municipality, an organization with a municipality, or
I understand.
going right to the county for countywide.
Okay.
So then you have the application cover page, pretty straightforward. They are applicants are asked to certify that they've reviewed this. That was added last year. Following that, Appendix C is a sample budget for applicants to utilize. Appendix D, all applicants are required to certify that they have not engaged a lobbyist, where payment to the lobbyist is contingent upon receiving this grant. Every applicant needs to include that. After that, then we just have the frequently asked questions that have been updated with the current dates, as well as the language related to pre-application workshops.
And all those frequently asked questions are available online also, correct?
Yeah, all of this is posted, this whole packet. I don't know if you all, or Jim may not be aware, applicants are asked if they're applying for fire EMS services, they're asked whether or not they're also applying to the state fire commissioner's office. So they actually get the link in in this application, if they're not familiar, that they can go there and apply for it. Did you? That link, I brought that link was updated for this year.
Is that for the 2% loan? What do you say, or you mean,
There's
is
a grant on there.
that the
And that's the
Yes.
$50,000.
Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah.
Okay, I understand.
So that's part of the application, yes.
I have a change for the cover page. Can we say applicant mailing address and then project location address?
Sure. So where it says applicant business address, you want mailing address?
Yes, and then project location address. It actually, I just had an issue with one of the awardees. Their award letter was sent to the project location, which is a park. So, so,
The squirrel got it.
Huh?
The squirrel's got it.
yeah, so I just clean that up a little bit.
So after that, there's the grant criteria, very few changes there, just to the dates of the timeline for this year, as well as there used to be a point structure where if you attended your pre-application conference before August 1, there was 1 point level, and if you waited later in the summer, then it was a lower point structure. With these workshops, there's just one, it's recommended you do this, you need to do this. If you don't, you may not get a hearing. The next is the hearing information sheet. That was created several years ago, again, to assist applicants on how to prepare, what to expect, when to arrive, how many copies of things to bring. And then the main change this year is to let applicants know that it may be live streamed. The board did actually have at least one applicant last year that was really thrown off by being on camera, and uncomfortable. So I thought it made sense, or, we thought it made sense to let applicant try, at least to let them know ahead of time that, you may be live stream.
I think it's important to live stream the transparency, the public transparency, but yeah, I think letting them know is really.
I don't remember which applicant it was, but the person was really uncomfortable.
I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just sort of
You're
stood out.
walking, camera.
Right.
And then finally, there's a pre-application, the application checklist. This was put together probably about 2 or 3 years ago, again, to try to assist applicants in putting together a complete application. These are the things you need to check off to make sure you go through this, before you hit send or, hit print. And it's almost pretty much a summary of, in addition to having these certain documents and meeting these certain dates, a checklist of all the sections in that application narrative that you want to make sure you're covering. And so that's the packet and the recommendation. The thought would be that what you approve today would be posted or made available July 1 to open up the process. Last year, there were somewhat significant changes that the guidelines actually went before the Board of Commissioners. I don't know that you've received direction to do that this year. But last year there were some more significant changes. I would say the changes on the sponsorship portion this year are really just to try to, make it a little more understandable and a little more accommodating in terms of that countywide impact. There were some applicants that may have viewed the language last year of how many people you serve, how many municipalities, as a little too strict, I guess. Are there any questions? So if there's a motion to approve the recommendations with the additional changes mentioned today,
I'll make that motion.
is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor for the approval? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Here's somebody.
So that'll go on the website when?
I'm going to update the timeline on the website tomorrow. We typically do not update the actual documents and let them be a live link until it opens on July 1, but the time frame will be there. I think, do you think it would be wise? Well, I guess it depends on when we schedule the pre-app or the workshops.
I think as you're saying, I think you can update on your website that there's now a timeline and applicants will know when to anticipate seeing the application packet. I would be concerned if you posted now that you know how it goes, you might start getting applications.
Yeah, I think I'll make the
And
the
sponsorship
links, yeah,
requests.
I think they'll make the links live on July 1. The timeline will be updated so people know. And maybe just direct them July 1. If we can set the dates for the pre-app workshops
Start
and have
posting
those on there.
Yeah.
So the workshops are these 6 days. And on July 1, you can contact me to schedule it. That way they can see what's coming, but July 1 is when it will all go live.
And so what we'll do is create a final version that has the additional changes that were approved today and make sure that Brooke has a copy of that, so it's ready to go.
And I will send it to you.
Okay.
On July 1, so that you have it, or you can check the website, but I'll make sure you have it July 1 when it goes live.
Any more comments? Mike?
And nothing else. Thank you so much for all the information. You guys were all very helpful today.
Thank you, Mike.
Just don't, I think we're having an exec session,
Correct.
so don't hang up, Mike.
Sir, your organization, right?
Pennsylvania Council of Churches.
PA Council of Churches. Thank you, sir. And if I may ask, was there any pushback when nonprofit or for-profit organizations weren't allowed to apply this year?
No, they
Is
were
there
allowed
anybody
to apply.
Or, I'm sorry?
They were allowed to apply.
Oh, they were allowed to apply,
They just didn't get it.
if they jumping up and down on that, or?
Of course.
Okay.
I get all those calls.
Yeah. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for all your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How long have you been a solicitor?
Well,
So I would say since 2022, right?
Mark, that's the first one.
But our firm has for since the commencement of
Oh,
the
that's